Yeah, that's the big dog hunt. Hello again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Kallas and Marks with your host, Joe Staszak, and of course, my esteemed co-host, Steve Kallas, Johnny Kallas. How are you, fellas? Getting set to wrap up pretty darn good week one of NFL football.
I'm good. I'm not as good as Steve, but I'm good.
6-0, Steve, and we're going to let you run the show today, man. 6-0, you swept the board. We
Yeah,
talked about that when you bet all the games in the playoffs like you have the last few years. Those
I
numbers
bet all
go
the games.
go
Yeah.
up really
If only I
starkly.
had.
So great. So hey, breaking news: Steelers they got smoked last night by the Texans 30-6. A couple late pick six and the scoop six touchdowns made it the score a little worse than maybe the game was because they were leading by 7-6 in the third quarter. But stats really show a disparity. Houston turned the ball over three times. I guess kept Pittsburgh in it, but they didn't do a whole lot. 2 for 10 on third down, while Houston was 10 of 15. And C.J. Stroud was dribbling the ball over the place like he was Steph Curry. Like I don't know what he was doing with the ball last night. But look, they won 30-6 from Mike Tomlin. After all the speculation, he actually took it upon himself. Maybe it was mutual, but it says he stepped down. Steve, I'll start with you. Why do you think he picked this time to step down?
I think, look, it's 19 years, and the biggest thing for him, yes, he won a Super Bowl, but he's never had a losing season. The problem for the Steelers is when you never have a losing season and you're 9-8 nowadays or whatever it is, you're always in the middle of the draft. You're never going to get really superstars there. And they've been a good team. I think he's a great coach. And he's going to find a job in 10 minutes if he wants one. But face it, I think the overwhelming majority of people thought the Texans were going to win that game. And yes, you're right. It was 7-3 in the third quarter. But I got to tell you guys, by the end of the game, and I mean the end of the game, Rodgers is down on the ground and a big lineman picks it up and runs 30 yards for a touchdown. And then, of course, the disastrous final didn't matter, pick six. But towards the end, I was feeling like when I watched Dan Marino's last game, you remember that 62-7.
You gave up 62 points. Yeah, Jimmy
Now,
Johnson's.
now this is 30-6, so you can tell me it's, half as bad, but it was just so deflating. And look, they couldn't do anything. I heard eight times from the announcers, oh, if Rodgers was young, he could have run away from them. And here's a newsflash, he's 42 or whatever he is. So I feel bad for Tomlin, but you know what? I think his analysis, and from all we know now at 2 o'clock, he stepped down. Didn't say he was fired, didn't say it was a mutual agreement. But if he wants to win, I think he saw what's coming next year for the Steelers. What are they next year? 9-8, 10-7. They just don't have, and they won't get, I don't think, those guys that they need. And I'm not knocking Rodgers, but they need more of a big time quarterback because all I heard is what would have happened had it been the good old days when Aaron Rodgers was Aaron Rodgers. He wasn't horrific this year. He was good at times, and they won that last game. This all would have happened last week if they didn't win their final game of the season, which I thought they wouldn't, frankly. But the Texans are head and shoulders. Their defense is incredible. But I think Tomlin still gets to do whatever he wants, just like Harbaugh has his pick of five jobs. I think Tomlin is the second in command now in terms of if you want to coach again. And presumably somebody will ask him that if and when he has a press conference.
Johnny, to Steve's point, Tomlin, listen, he's had like umpteen seasons uh, without a losing record, but he's also 0-7 in the last seven playoff games, and really hasn't won anything since he's had Ben Roethlisberger. So Aaron Rodgers, maybe it was patchwork. Like they tried Russell Wilson, they've had Mason Rudolph, they drafted Kenny Pickett in the first round. They really haven't, like Mike Tomlin, that record and his ability to have winning seasons might have been jacked if he had like a good quarterback. Like he went to two Super Bowls with Ben Roethlisberger, their franchise quarterback. Maybe their best since they had Terry Bradshaw, won four Super Bowls. So how much is it uh, Tomlin's fault or is it management's fault that they never went out and found that right quarterback since Ben Roethlisberger left?
Yeah, it's fascinating. The Tomlin Harbaugh, it's two very different cases. Tomlin hasn't won a playoff game since 2016, lost brutally to the Patriots in the 2016 AFC Championship, and has since gone 6-1 and outs. But really, since Big Ben retired, they haven't figured out the quarterback position, as you said, Joe. Rodgers was probably their best quarterback in the last 6 or 7 years, and he had a average to above average season, I would say. Harbaugh, on the other hand, who has his selection of jobs, has had a two-time MVP and hasn't really sniffed the Super Bowl. So I think Tomlin, what's really interesting is the Steelers actually have some control over Tomlin's conference. They're a professional organization. I don't know how much they would ask, but if Tomlin wants to go to another team, they can negotiate something in return because he still has 2 years left on his contract. I wouldn't be surprised if Tomlin goes into TV for a year or two either. I think he'd be a good fit for that. In general, though, just with this game, I think what's really fascinating is just don't forget about these defensive coaches, man. Tomlin, obviously, Harbaugh, special teams, D'Amico Ryans, what a hire. I mean, this Texans front four is just as good as it gets, going to set up for a great game on Sunday. So you're thinking about a new coach, defense wins too. 6 points off of three turnovers. That's one of the worst offensive performances in playoff history to score 6 points off of three turnovers. And I don't know how CJ Stroud didn't lose a fumble all year after watching whatever the heck that was yesterday, but he better clean that up come Sunday. There's a good one in Foxborough come Sunday.
This is a very good one. We'll get to that game. Surely another upset. Well, that wasn't an upset, but an upset on Sunday. A lot of people were talking about it because they were the defending champs. Technically, they still are the defending champs until someone wins the Super Bowl, but they lost. The Eagles lost 23-19 to the 49ers. You talk about 6 points off three turnovers. The Eagles cranked out 3 points off of two turnovers. They won the turnover battle by two. But again, their offense went south in the second half. They had a lead. They had 13 points at the half. That big extra point really turned around that they missed, came back to bite them. And that was a problem a lot of the year. Jake Elliott, a lot of the things that we saw all year came back to bite them. Second half, 6 points. They averaged 9 points in the second half all season, and they just couldn't get it done. Who do you blame the most? Because you have players blaming themselves, and you have the fan base wanting to kill Kevin Patullo. Jason Kelsey's blaming the players. Everyone's back in Patullo now. Again, they know him as a person. There's probably some mitigating factors there. They like the guy, and there's a lot of execution problems. I get it. There were drop balls. AJ Brown, I thought could have made a better effort on the second quarter fly down the middle of the field. He had one on his hands. I know Sirianni and him were yapping, but it was basically to get off the field because they were about to punt it. I don't think it had anything to do with him dropping balls. He dropped one on the last drive. They made up for it with the Goddard 4th and 5 conversion, but then they didn't gain another yard after they got to the 20-yard line. They got to the red zone, not another yard. The last play was horrifically designed, and then Jalen threw it into triple coverage. Who do you blame most for the Eagles' problems this year? Johnie.
You might be the most qualified to answer that question, Joe. I do think I didn't realize they were all sticking behind him. I thought I saw in a Jalen Hurts interview they asked him about the offensive coordinator coming back, and he effectively said that's really not for me to comment
He
on.
dodged it. I'm sorry. I
Too
just saw
early.
that actually. He dodged it. It's
Yeah,
kind of like
so I
Lamar Jackson last week when they asked about Hart. He kind of like, yeah, I'm into the game right now. Don't ask me that question.
and look what happened to Harbaugh, right? And what
Yeah,
happened to
yeah.
Harbaugh. So look, and Hurts is a guy we've talked about this last year, and you were actually right on this show. I thought good players would be able to overcome not so great play calling, but if you're looking at this season, that did not end up being the case. That these players were not able to overcome. And look, you're not going to pull the reins on Jalen Hurts at this point. He's done too much for you. So I think they're probably in line for another offensive coordinator. The AJ Brown drop was brutal. I understand they made up for it. It could have been a better throw to Devontae, though Devontae could potentially come down with that. And then it's clear for whatever reason he just had a lot more trust in Goddard to throw into triple coverage on fourth down. And once again, I think all of this though results from the fact this is what I said. I thought the biggest implication for them losing Week 18 wasn't that they'd have to go into Chicago this upcoming week if they had won, but it's that they had to play a much better 49ers team. Now, Steve will get into this. I was shocked that the 49ers were able to not just compete, but compete at a high level once George Kittle went down. But once again, the Eagles. We had this conversation a few weeks ago. Is this going to be more like 22 or 24 or more like 23? It obviously turned out being like 23.
Yeah, so they went to a Super Bowl and then they got knocked out in the first round of a wild card round, and then they won the Super Bowl and then got knocked out in the first year of the wild card. Steve, I mean, they talk about it. It's really tough to repeat. And I heard, was it McCourty? Devin McCourty on one of the shows this morning. He talked about it. They had really hard summers, or not summers, but OTAs and camps leading up to it, because Belichick rode them hard, almost like harder after they won a Super Bowl, because you have to take it up a gear, he said. And it seems like that, say what you want, but the players really didn't perform either. I think a lot of blame goes around. Who would you really hang the horse collar around?
Hanging on the coach for not trying to get the second seed. I'd love to know if the same thing happens next year, if he'll change his mind a little. And even if he doesn't, if it's 16-0 at the half, if that'll change his mind. Play wise, I totally blame Lane Johnson. Once he's not in the field, they're terrible. I mean, let's be realistic now. I think it's no, really, I think it's like 15-26 or something now. And
Big difference.
he's a big difference. Even if he could have gone on one of those, go on and give it a try. Remember Stamkos in the Stanley Cup Finals, Joe? He came
Scored a
in,
goal and then got hurt again,
he
but at least
played
he scored a
5 minutes,
goal.
scored a goal, got hurt, and they won the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
I think that can do stuff to you mentally. Um, I thought Hurts might be able to run with the ball more than he did. And as Johnny said, I mean, last week I said 49ers have a chance to win this game. I said the Panthers had a puncher's chance to win, but that was so many points. But with these points, I thought they could win. I didn't say they would win. But when Kittle got hurt, to me, it's got to be McCaffrey, Kittle, and Purdy. And Purdy, of course, is going way up now for the non-believers. But once Kittle got hurt, I'm watching the game and I'm like, wow, it's going to be awful hard for them to win. But they somehow pulled it off. And I do want to speak briefly. I'm a huge Mina Kimes fan, as you guys know. I love that show. But she was, she's a big star now. I get all that, but she was mocking the San Francisco 49ers three linebackers whom nobody ever heard of. And she said, I can't believe Eric Kendricks is on the team. And Kendricks is like an 11-year guy who's been around forever. He's an experienced veteran. Maybe he's not so good. Meanwhile, he winds up with 10 tackles, 7 solo, 2 tackles for loss. And who put his hand out to win the game? That was a win the game play on the final play when he threw it down the middle. What was that, triple coverage, Joe? But
Yep,
it
at
was
least.
Eric Kendricks. And I was hoping, I was watching some other stuff and hoping that they would somehow apologize because this guy deserves an apology, man. And so their linebackers actually played pretty well. He was the best of the bunch. And they talked about him during the game, how well respected, what a great veteran he is. And he must have done something right on the final play of the game, because I think there's a chance that pass gets through, Johnny, if he's not there to tip it. Even though, again, it was triple coverage. Purdy to me was real good. Yeah, he threw 2 picks, but it was a very windy day. So I think you can pretty much throw that out. He made big throws when he had to. And of course, we can't leave this game without talking about the touchdown pass to McCaffrey. I think it was
Well,
Jennings.
I was going to say Demarcus Robinson, haven't heard. I mean, these guys came
Oh,
out of
yeah.
nowhere. Demarcus Robinson was like a Chief forever and had his best years there. Had 4 touchdowns with the Rams a few years ago, but second play of the game, he had a 59-yard catch, and then he throws a touchdown. It got completely obliterated by Jalen Carter after he released the ball. It was a high school quarterback, of course, like they're all high school quarterbacks. They're all the best players that came out of from wherever they came out of. But he makes a great pass, great call. It's like the Eagles did none of that. No, I called for do something, trick plays, be creative. They did none of that all year. Kyle Shannon calls a great trick play right there, the end around. And I thought he held it long enough. A lot of guys you see go real wide. You could say, "Oh, he's going to throw," and He held it long enough, I think, to suck
Like a runner. Yeah,
the
like a runner.
secondary in just long enough. You only need to do it a half second more than normal. And the defensive back came up. McCaffrey's like later, and he made a perfect pass. McCaffrey, looked like Jerry Rice with the catch, and then he makes another one on Purdy's third read on the winning touchdown. Turned out to be the winning touchdown later.
Hey,
But I
hey,
didn't mean to
Joe.
interrupt, but Demarcus Robinson was my next question. But go ahead.
No, I just want to say something about Shanahan. He's a great coach. He's a great offensive mind. But I do recall, Johnny, tell me if I'm wrong, when we went to the Atlanta Falcons Patriots Super Bowl, wasn't Shanahan the offensive coordinator? Who was the coach? Dan Quinn, I think, was the
It was
coach.
Dan
Yep.
Quinn.
And Johnny and I were at that game, and that final in regulation when they had the ball, when the Falcons had the ball, they were in field goal range. And they had who? Their kicker, Bryant? Who was their kicker, Johnny? Do you remember?
It was
Matt Bryant.
Matt
He was
Bryant.
Mr. Solid. And I remember saying to Johnny after the game, not during the game, but after the game, the first one they ran and got a loss of one. And then Matt Ryan took the worst sack in Super Bowl history. But I remember saying to Johnny afterwards, they could have taken 3 knees, kicked a 42-yard field goal, been up 11 with 4 minutes left, and the game would have been over. Is that Shanahan's fault? Is that Quinn's fault? I remember thinking about them and saying, man, they're going to have a hard time winning the Super Bowl. And Shanahan's a genius, don't get me wrong. But on that day, I thought they should have just run it into the line 3 times.
Yeah, he's had some problems in Super Bowls. Blew a 10-point lead to the Chiefs a couple years ago as well and lost that game in overtime.
Twice. Did it
Matt,
twice.
yeah, that's right. Twice he did that. Matt LaFleur, I think, was Matt Ryan's position coach too. A lot of big names on that sideline for that 28-3 disaster. All right, Johnny, let's go to your game, the Patriots game, because this was an interesting game, and I really was looking forward to seeing how Justin Herbert would perform in a playoff game. Again, it's a team game. I get it. He did not have a lot of success. Although the Patriots defense was swarming in yards. They almost doubled the yards of the Chargers. 1 for 10 on third downs was Herbert. And then, it was close late, but Drake May made some great play calls, but he also made some great plays down the stretch, enough to win that game 16-3. Your thoughts on who really took that game over? Because to me, it looked like the defense was like the old Patriots defense.
Yeah, man, it reminded me of the last time they won a playoff game, which was the February 2019 Super Bowl where they beat Sean McVay and the Rams 13-3, right? Very similar, just a
Yep.
dominant defensive performance. A lot of times these Super Bowl winners get overpaid, but I'm happy we paid that for Milton Williams, man. I mean, I don't know if you saw that last sack that he had against Herbert, but just an absolute beast. And that's the kind of interior pressure they're going to need if they're going to go on a deep playoff run. So Patriots played great. It was also refreshing after, the Niners-Eagles game maybe wasn't totally like this, but generally just a ton of offense the first few playoff games. And I'm a little bit too much of an old school guy, especially for my age. I really appreciate really good defensive play. I don't need these, 35 to 31 games all the time. So it was just good to see a good defensive effort by both sides. Obviously, the Patriots much more so than the Chargers, but the Chargers did a lot of things to Drake May, and May is going to have to learn really quick, because the Chargers were far and away the best defense the Patriots had played, and they're about to play an even better one, an even better front four. And May had a couple times where he had brutal fumbles. The first time they were driving in field goal range where a field goal felt like 2 touchdowns in that game. May gets hit, gets away from it, but inexplicably still tried to throw the ball and then fumbled. Then he had another bad fumble where they're up 13. They had a lucky bounce that ended up going into the hands of Jared Wilson, their guard, who was the one who gave up the pressure. But hopefully May can learn quick. At the same time, that's the kind of throw he can make to Hunter Henry on that touchdown, man. I mean, he makes these downfield throws
Great throw.
look easy over an outstretched Derwin James, who's as good as any safety in the league. So cautiously optimistic for the Patriots going into this weekend. Overall, great defense. I think what you have to really, the general conclusion is we've talked a lot about May, MVP candidate, and their offense. Their defense is what won them the game, and this is going to be a good one on Sunday.
I agree. Steve, a lot was said about the Patriots, the 32nd schedule in terms of the easiest 30 strength of schedule was 32nd in the league. And listen, you play and you go up against who you're asked to go up against. So not taking anything away from them, but this was a test. Chargers were 11-6, had a pretty good stretch drive, and they rose to the occasion. Didn't score a ton of points, but their defense, I mean, they sacked Herbert 6 times and for 39 yards, and he really had nowhere to go. And again, third downs, 1 of 10. That's really another stat that you look at. I look at turnovers first, and then third down conversions. 1 of 10. That's not going to get you any. It's not going to get you far in the playoffs.
Well, I won't say it's hard to blame Herbert. I will say he's got to take some blame, but obviously they need a major rehaul on their offensive line. But I heard even Ryan Clark again on TV, who I thought should know better. Oh, Herbert's been so great this year. I think now's the time. Blah 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, but he's got this 2-game history now, 3-game history. To me, he's in Lamar Jackson territory. You're gonna Herbert's real good next year, and they go into the playoffs, and you're gonna say this is the year for Herbert. There's nothing you can see during the season that's going to tell you this is the year. because as he's learning, maybe the hard way, the playoffs are a totally different animal. It's just not the same. It's not even the same if you play the last game of the year to make the playoffs. It's just not like that. So he really had no answers. He looked a little befuddled. I'm not saying he was seeing ghosts, but he looked a little befuddled and frankly had no help. As for May, as Johnny pointed out, he's going to have to learn quickly. I mean, that one interception, he goes back to throw. He starts to throw, his arm gets hit, and then he tries to throw again. If a guy's on your arm, he's 6 inches from you. So I thought that was a big mistake. And Johnny's right about the Texans and their front four. Having said that, the Chargers are a very good defense. So I think this was a good game for him in terms of seeing what's going to happen next week. And you gotta hope, frankly, that CJ Stroud, who was unbelievable in year one and awful in game two and year two, he reverted to year two yesterday, and only because his team is so good. I think Johnny said 3 picks, 3 turnovers, 6 points. That doesn't even make any sense. And so I think the Patriots have a lot to work on. This is a toss-up game. I haven't seen any spread yet, but this is a toss-up game to me.
Patriots 3. Patriots -3.
Well, I guess that's because they're at home, right? You get the 3 points because you're at home. Um, and I think a lot of it depends on what the Patriots defense can do to CJ Stroud, because I think if the Patriots can get 3 turnovers, I think they're going to be in a lot better shape, because let's face it, the Steelers couldn't move the ball from, 10 yards to 25 yards. It couldn't happen. So I give the Patriots a lot of credit. That's a good win. Anybody who thinks May isn't cool under pressure, yeah, he made some mistakes, but to me, they weren't panic mistakes. They were just he's trying to do too much. And if Belichick was there, and maybe Vrabel says the same thing, do your job, do what you're limited to. Don't try and be Superman.
Speaking of Superman, let's go back to the Bills game. Let's talk about that a little bit. The Bills and Jaguars. You know, lots been said that Patrick Mahomes isn't in the playoffs anymore. Lamar Jackson's not there, Joe Burrow. So this might be Josh Allen's year. He kind of took it upon himself to really go down to Jacksonville and take matters into his own hands. He threw for a touchdown, ran for 2 more, made a great pass to Brandon Cooks on the last drive to put them up over the Bills. They had a tush push that went 10 yards. They scored on the next play. That was, for a team who voted against it, they used it a lot, which is fine. I'm fine. They used it a lot against the Chiefs too, and still voted against it. I didn't get that, but anyway, yeah. I mean, James Cook was held to 46 yards, but they still came out on top. Their defense played pretty well against Trevor Lawrence. Picked him off once. I thought one of the keys to the game was, and I know I saw Kyle Shanahan take a field goal late in the second quarter, which I thought that's a pretty smart move because it was 4th and 2, and they were looking to go for it. They called timeout. Jacksonville had an opportunity to go up 14-6, I think, or 14-3, and had the ball because they got a turnover. And on fourth down, Trevor Lawrence dove for the first time. They gave it to him, but it turned out his shin was down, and gave the ball over to Buffalo. So they got no points out of that. And I think you look back and say, yeah, I don't care what analytics says. Sometimes in games like that, they're going to be tight. I'm not so sure you take the 3 there. And I said that before they snapped the ball. So I'm not saying I'm right, because a lot of times you convert that and then you want to, put a team in a bad position. I get all that and be aggressive. But sometimes I think you have to have I don't know, a feel for the game. I'm not sure if I mean, hindsight's 2020, but they didn't get it, and I thought that was a big turning point. Johnny, your thoughts on how the Bills went down there, won that game, and now they survived and advanced. The bonus is you get another round, and we'll see what's what.
Yeah, I'll let Steve talk about the E word that I know he wants to get out there. But what I'll say is I think it's gone too far in the opposite direction, Joe, with these go for it on fourth down.
Right.
Especially I understand on the aggregate why it makes sense analytically, statistically, et cetera, but these are specific playoff games, and you can't put into the algorithm what the Jaguars defense or the Bills offense are doing on this given day and time, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we've seen a lot of coaches, and it's led by, look, some guys having success. Look in Chicago, though they have to come back by 400 points every week. partially because they don't take three sometimes, but they end up winning. So, um, but yeah, I'm in total agreement with you. Whether that's old school, I don't know, but I'm in total agreement with you. Just a couple things about this game. Look, the Jaguars had the best run defense in football, I believe, and the Bills struggled to run the ball, but Josh Allen put the cape on. And he's the best quarterback remaining. And I'm a Drake May guy, but he's the best quarterback remaining. It is the first time that Allen has had either a road playoff win or a fourth quarter comeback in the playoffs, which for all we talk about Josh Allen being pretty clutch is pretty amazing. But give him credit, he did both on the same day. And I'm going to give a quick shout out, man, to Tre'Davious White. Man, I thought he was retired.
Right?
Back to Tre'Davious White, he's playing like it's 2018 or something. I mean, just
Unbelievable.
a couple of incredible plays, including the breakup at the end. And what I
Yep.
will say, there was a big debate, and Steve and I talked about this. When you have first and goal on the one, and you can kill some clock, so you don't have Cam Little who can make an 82-yard field goal or whatever people say he can make, come on out. Why not just fall on the ball and give yourself some extra time? And I think that generally makes sense. But all I'll say is, sometimes in the playoffs, you need your defense to make a play, man. And the
Yeah.
Bills took the touchdown, and then their defense made a play. And you need your defense. Look, you need your defense to make plays if you're going to win championship level playoff games. And give the Bills credit. That's what they did.
Yeah, I hear a lot of that, and I'm like, if I have an opportunity to go up in there, I don't think I'm getting cute because not because I'm worried about a fumbled snap, but an illegal procedure penalty if you're
All
a push
start.
foot, you move
Yeah.
it back 5 yards. It almost cost the Eagles in the Rams playoff game last year. Then you're in a different position. You're like, oh hell, we're not at the half-inch line anymore. So I thought they did the right thing by punching it in there. I know Jacksonville let them score because they needed the ball, and they let your defense come up with a play. They're one of the best secondaries in the league, and it showed. You Tre'Davious White was a great play. Steve, your thoughts?
Look, I said it last week. I think the Bills can win this on experience, and I think they won it on experience. And did Allen have to be Superman? Yeah, he was. But was he Superman? Absolutely. I mean, he took a pounding too. And the Jags are real good. They'll be real tough next year. Lawrence, this was his third. I think he's 1-1 in the playoffs before this game. Now he's 1-2. They totally stopped the run. I thought they could run because the Bills have the leading rusher in the league and they have Josh Allen, but they really couldn't. But he was able to be Superman, and I give him a lot of credit. I give the Bills a lot of credit. I don't know how far they're going. We'll have to wait till Friday or Saturday to talk about that. But don't get me wrong, the Jags I mean, they're a team that's on the come because their run defense, was as good as advertised, and the Bills did what they had to do. I give them all the credit in the world. So. And Lawrence threw two interceptions. I don't know if you can really blame him for the last one. That was, desperation time very late in the game. But these four games, not the two that weren't close, but these four games were barn burners like you don't usually see in the weekend. And they all could have gone either way, frankly, if we're going to talk, I guess, on Saturday from a point spread perspective. Um, but I thought the Bills deserved to win the game. The Jags could have won the game and they didn't. And, it's almost becoming sometimes one of these who's getting the ball last. Tell me who the guy is who's getting the ball last, and I'll tell you who's going to win.
But just really quick, I'm sorry. The one thing I'll say though is that the Jags did, the Bills a team finally made a defensive play. It was the first time, it was the first time like all playoff weekend when Tre'Davious White had that deflection and they threw the interception. Just the one thing I forgot to mention, Bills run defense very poor. ATN 10 carries, 67 yards. You have nobody with more than 10 carries when the Bills run defense is that bad. That's really bad on Liam Cohen, who's done a great job. Don't get me wrong. And like Steve said, they're coming. But I mean, you got to run the ball more than 10 times, especially when you guys at 6.7 a carry.
I'm glad you said that, John. I was going to wrap with that. Tootin and ATN at one point were averaging 12 and a half yards a carry. And it wasn't like after three plays, it was after a decent sized sample size that they were just, and look, Tootin ended up with four carries for 51 yards and they kept going away from it. Look, I know Trevor Lawrence, he can sling it, and did a pretty good job, made some nice passes, but they were just chunk, chunk, chunk. Why are you going away from the run game? I felt like, this was like the Eagles South. They do stupid things. And I agree. I thought Liam Cohen maybe takes a little blame for kind of getting away from it there, his offense, because he had them and he was doing what they were imposing their will and just chunk, chunk, chunk. But unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. So two more games. Let's go through them real quickly. Let's talk about the Bears and Packers. Packers are 21 21-3 or 21-6 lead at the I think it was 21-3 because Brandon McManus missed a field goal at the end of the half. He also missed another one in the fourth quarter, which might have put the game in peril for the Bears, which it should have already been. And he missed an extra point. Like he was kind of the GOAT, but so was seemed like the Packers kind of, decided, pull back a little bit on their offense. When Jordan Love, I've criticized him, thought he had a pretty good game and they had a good game plan, but they let the Bears back in it. And despite Caleb Williams, 24 or 48, I think he's 50% completion percentage. You kind of take that because then you see some of the throws he makes. The one he made on fourth down to Roman Tunze when the guy was hanging on his foot off of 1 foot and dropped it in over three Packers and
Yeah.
behind. That's like legendary because that was 4th and 8 and they were down 11 at that point. They don't get that. 3 more minutes goes off the clock. They're down to like 2 or 3. I don't think they win that game. So, Steve, first of all, your thoughts on the Packers and how they let that one get away.
Well, the first thing I thought of watching that game was wondering about the Eagles, frankly, because this was the old, would you rather play Love or would you rather, not play them? And the other problem for the Packers, and I thought it was a problem, I don't know that we spoke about it last week. They were coming into this game with 4 losses in a row. And you can stand on your head and give me all the reasons why, and at the end, if they wanted to rest, etc. Now they finished the season with 5 losses in a row. So that's a big problem. So I thought, look, it was another one of these. The Bears can do it. It's another miracle comeback. It's 21-3. And I could tell Johnie on ESPN when they were showing the greatest comebacks in the history of the postseason. I think it was 18 points or more. And of course, you know who the leaders were because they still talk about 28-3. And whenever you say 28-3, everybody who's a football fan knows what you mean. So I give him a lot of credit for hanging tough. Caleb Williams, you're right, Joe, because I think he makes some incredible plays that when he's 24 for 48, but for 361 yards, you're going to complain about that? I don't think so. And once again, the kicking, when we view field goals now, like 40 and under automatic make, you can never miss one. Extra points now have become, even though they're much farther than they used to be in the old days, automatic. And what we've seen is a number of kickers miss both in the same game. And that's kind of become super important at times. And so, I assume you both saw the handshake afterwards. We'd like to see Ben Johnson show a little class now. He's on a good team. He's a good coach.
He's a punk.
I know, and I think that comes back to bite you sometimes, and we'll see what happens in the future.
I kind of hope it does. But Johnny, your thoughts on the Bears, another comeback. It's like 7 fourth quarter comebacks. How sustainable is that as the competition gets a little better and the coaching gets a little better?
I'll sum up this game. I think this is the big picture takeaway. I was born in 1992, and I think finally, 33 years, for the first time in my life, the Chicago Bears have a better quarterback than the Green Bay Packers. I think it's the first time, I think.
Yeah.
And that's not a shot at Jordan Love because
Yeah.
Love statistically played well. I think he's borderline top 10. Look, maybe if he has a really good team around him, they can, I could see him winning a Super Bowl. I don't think that's out of the question. But Caleb, man, he's just, you can see why he was drafted #1 overall. I mean, that roll left throw on 4th and 8, like you said, Joe. I don't know. I don't know how many quarterbacks. I
The
mean,
linebacker hanging on his right foot.
it's just incredible. And then I won't look, I'm not a big Ben Johnson fan either, but and a couple teams use this sort of fake screen, fake wide receiver screen, and then the guy goes out to win the game pretty much. I mean, just an incredible
DJ
play
Moore
call.
throw is tremendous.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think overall, now in terms of how sustainable it is, I also think the Bears have Dennis Allen. I think is a top 3 or 4 defensive coordinator. I just don't think he's working with a whole lot, and they rely on bringing pressure, pressure, pressure. Sometimes a little bit too much. I think this is going to be a high scoring one, fellas. Rams at Bears. The only thing that might limit it. I don't know if you guys have seen that weather forecast, but it's going to be a fun January football game. So,
Really.
how long can they sustain it? All I'll say is to bring it back to something Steve mentions quite a bit, and greatest game I'll ever go to in my life. But Ben Johnson in training camp showed them footage, the entire Bears team, of the 28-3 comeback. And there's a lot of 28-3 comeback, I have to say, in this team. I think that was the 4th team to win after trailing by 15 or more in the postseason. First
Right. That's
since
right.
almost 10 years ago on that day in February 2017.
Amazing stuff. Last game, and was the first game. We'll talk Rams Panthers. Rams looked like they were getting some separation in the game, and then Panthers made some plays, and you got to give Bryce Young a lot of credit. He came back, hung in there. At the end of the day, though, they gave the Rams the ball back with some time, and Nakua and the boys went right down the field, and it looked like boom, 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 boom. And then Parkinson makes a tremendous, tremendous catch, kind of spinning around and getting his feet in, making the catch. It was a pretty impressive drive there to finish the game. I'm not sure if Carolina backed off a little too much because they were afraid of, Adams, who took a big shot earlier in the game, came back and played okay. And Nakua, I think he had 10 catches for a buck 11. He did drop a touchdown pass, but he did so many other things. He had already scored 2 touchdowns, and he broke up an interception when he turned into a defender on a bad pass down in the goal line, which certainly helped. I think they ended up scoring a couple plays later in the first half. But I mean, Nakua just kind of did what he wanted to, and I'm not sure if that defense would, if they went into a little bit of a preventer, just saw because they were afraid to get beat deep. But looked like Stafford, that was his comfort zone. Johnny, what did you think of that last drive?
Oh no, it was incredible. And yeah, I would just give Puka so much credit. I mean, I think he's the best offensive non-quarterback player in football. I mean, just to
Agreed.
never mind all these catches. I know he did drop one and he got really hard on himself, but to make that pass breakup probably saved them the game in the fourth quarter.
Right? Was that in the fourth
Um,
quarter? Yeah. Wow.
I think
Oh
so.
yeah.
It was quite late. The only thing I'll say though, man, if you're the Rams, like that's flirting with disaster there. There is something about sometimes these bad teams who win their division, or relatively speaking, still end up competing pretty good in the playoffs. I mentioned that beast mode game where they beat the Saints. There's been a couple others over the years. I think Washington played Tampa pretty tough, I remember, in Brady's first season there. So you can't take these for granted. But there's something up with this Rams secondary, man. The Panthers scored 31 on them twice. I think it's the most points the Panthers scored all year. And the Rams have a good front seven, but their secondary leaves a lot lacking, which is kind of a problem playing against Chicago and Ben Johnson. But once again, weather could be a factor there. So I don't know how to think about this in light of the Rams. The NFC to me, each of these teams has a glaring weakness. All of a sudden, the AFC teams almost seem a lot stronger to me than the NFC. But the NFC, Niners aren't healthy. Seahawks have a quarterback who doesn't win big games. The Rams can't defend anyone all of a sudden. And then now I'm quickly blanking. Oh, and who are the Rams? Who are the Rams playing?
Bears.
Oh, and
Yeah.
then of course, and then the
Right.
Bears can't stop anybody either. So I don't know. It's going to be a tough one to predict these last couple games here in the NFC.
It is. You're right, Johnny. The two highest scoring games of Carolina this year were both against the Rams, 31 points. In an upset earlier in the year, you remember the 3 interceptions by Stafford, and then they almost got him again. Steve, your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, just very quickly on this last one. As I said last week, I thought they could maybe get a backdoor cover or keep it close or do something. I didn't think it was going to be like this, but a couple of things. We talked about Hubbard and his running, 7 carries for 65 yards. That was awful good. And Coker is a young star, 9 receptions, 134 yards and a touchdown. But the only thing I'll focus on remaining in that game, Panthers' final possession, 4 incomplete passes with 3 timeouts in your pocket. If you got 3 timeouts and you want to run it, and they were running it okay, if you want to run it, they should have taken at least one chance. Maybe not on first down. I'm a big believer in throwing it on first down, but I think that's what they should have done. Would it have made a difference? Well, if you were told this was going to be a field goal game before the game, you would have laughed, or most people would have laughed. And nobody gave the Panthers a shot, but they're coming too. I just don't know that they're coming like some other teams are coming, like the Jags, I would say. Joe, I just want to go back quickly, 30 seconds to the Chargers Patriots, because this is a thing that's been around for 40 years. And they're fourth and goal from the 2 yard line. Chargers have the ball. It's nothing, nothing. It's early in the game. How many times are we talking about take the lead, get the points, take the lead? I remember Parcells in the 80s and 90s. He would say, if you get close early, you want to get points on the board. You don't want to gamble. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. And it seems to me these defenses are getting better at stopping you fourth and goal from the 2. I know what the analytics say. Would that have made a big difference in the game? Well, you would have been up 3-0 for a long time. and then it would have been 6-6. And that's not hindsight. I don't understand why. And afterwards, this is really scary. If you're a Chargers fan, what's the first thing Harbaugh said afterwards? You're cracking jokes, this and that. And what he said was, quote, I really don't have the answers. So that's a problem for this game and for the future for the Chargers. As great as I think Herbert is, during the regular
They,
season.
they just fired Roman and their offensive line because they just fired their offensive coordinator and their offensive line coach. So I guess that's his answer, Steve. We'll
That's
see.
his
Yeah, you
answer.
gotta blame somebody.
No, I agree with you, Steve. That's why I thought Shannon, I thought it was smart taking 3 points there instead of panicking and always having to get that first down because you might leave other points on the board. I think it's okay to take three once in a while, kind of a feel for the game, especially in the postseason. Gentlemen, great stuff. We'll be back Saturday, preview four more games, 8 teams left, 4 games, all good ones. Looking forward to it. Johnny, your team's still in it. That's good news. 'Cause
Long
that's
time coming. Not
that's
really long time,
right,
but
but
long
it
time.
happened quickly, man. It happened quickly from what they were last year. So
Spoiled,
I
spoiled.
like to see that. I do like to see that. It's good stuff. Overnight, I have some other Patriots fans that I can't believe they're already back in the mix, which is good. It's good to see. I was a big Brady guy, so I
Hey, to
like that.
Johnny's credit, he was always a Patriots fan, even when they were bad,
Yep.
and he rooted for both when Brady went to the Bucks.
Steve Grogan et al., right? Back in the day. Good stuff. Good stuff, fellas. We'll catch you Sunday, and you can get Steve's stuff on his daily Facebook forum page. Speaking of sports, with Steve Kallas, you can follow this podcast on YouTube or all the audio outlets. You can follow me on Instagram at Joe Staszak 4799 or on Twitter X at Joe Staszak 975. Thanks for watching, folks. Johnny, Steve, great stuff. Have a great week and look forward to next weekend.
Always a pleasure.
You too. Talk to you guys later, and we appreciate you watching, folks.